make sure we're good. All right, let me get record meeting. All right, so we'll get going again tonight. Any questions from last week? I know last week was a lot of me talking, so it got very boring. I hope tonight shouldn't be quite the same. Tonight should be a lot more interaction on your guys' part. Us kind of working through some of the initial size up stuff, 360 follow-up, things like that. So any questions from last week before we start going forward?
Do you have a recording from last week?
I do, so that brings up a great point. So that has been uploaded. So that is on, we uploaded it to our YouTube channel. So SBM FD Training Division. If you go on YouTube, look up that, that link. That channel will have all of that stuff along with other stuff as well. So there's also, we've recorded other things on there that might be beneficial as we kind of continue along this process. One was the first 5 minutes. It was another 2-hour drill that we did, and then a kind of a fire behavior operations. Again, might kind of help with some of that decision-making process and things like that. So another great reference and tool to kind of sharpen your skills as you go through this whole process. So, well, we will upload all of these. So the first series is already uploaded, and I'll upload the rest of these as we go as well. So any other questions? All right. So tonight, obviously, we're going to hit initial size ups, 360 reports. I think it's important for me to kind of hit on. I don't think I really hit on it enough last week, is that a lot of this is based on blue card type curriculum. So I'm not teaching you blue card. This is not a blue card class. But a lot of what we have developed out of our incident command standards came from blue card. We've taken it and kind of modified it to match how we run our organization. And that's really what blue card is designed around, is here's the framework and I'll make it match your organization. So I just kind of want to hit on that. So still think it's a great learning tool. Anybody that hasn't taken it, still, I would encourage taking that as well. But a lot of that is built around that. And the two big components that we're going to hit on today, the initial size ups and the 360 follow-ups. And those, I personally believe, are really the tone setters for any incident. And they're really going to allow you to establish a good command and allow you to kind of move through and develop. So size up, what is it? Who wants to tell me? What do you see, right? Size up, it's my first initial glance. I get on scene and it's my job to kind of communicate to everyone else, what do we have, right? What do we put in that size up? It's what we see, but how do we define that?
Property we're at, commercial, residential, stories, medium, small.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I like to break it down into really the biggest components that we're talking about on a size up. You're always going to be hitting on the building description. So we're going to describe the building. We're going to describe the problem and its location. You're going to talk about the actions that we're taking and that we're assigning. What's the strategy? Who is in command? And then we also followed up with, do we need to upgrade, downgrade, any of those other things? All right, so that's really breaking it down to its core components. That's really what we're talking about a size up should contain. Now we'll move our way through on how we define each and every one of those and use standard and repeatable terminology. So again, we talk about size. Why does size matter?
More fuel.
Again, the fuel load, so is, if it's a large building compared to a small, does that change our tactics or our mindset or our thought process on how we'd be attacking it? Yes. Right? Okay. And how did we standardize it? We talked about it a little bit last week. How do we standardize sizes?
Reaching your host.
Reaching your host. So we base it off of, are we able to accomplish 100% of reach through a structure? If we are, small. If it's 75%, 50%, and really anything beyond that, mega, very large. I don't like to get too complex with a lot of those. Height. Why do we care about height? Collapse zones. That makes sense. If you're on scene of a 4-story building and you hear defensive fire conditions, does that change your mindset a little bit for the next arriving truck and where you would position? Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely. What if you arrive on a residence? Is there a difference between a single story and a 2-story? I mean, it might matter a little bit on fire description and location, but really there is a fairly significant change in a 1-story versus a 2-story. Why?
Search twice as much.
Yeah, and we've got one location. Let's say the fire's on the 1st floor. I've got another floor of living space potentially that fire is going to want to grow up into, right? So now I have to not just think about my initial assignment for that fire location, but I've got other locations that need to be addressed. All right. Building type. What do we learn when somebody says a building type? And by that, I mean residential versus apartment versus industrial versus, exactly. So if we start hearing in some of our commercial areas, if it's a commercial building, we're generously fortunate enough to say that it's a sprinklered location. Now, that's not always true, right? Not every building is. But a lot of our newer construction is going to be sprinkled, all right? And that changes the mindset quite a bit. Anything else that would change? Occupancy, right? On a residence versus, let's say, Cub Foods. What's the difference in the occupancy type? Cub Foods is going to have a lot more people inside of it, but if there's just a little light fire or something back in the warehouse or in one of the cooler areas, generally everyone's going to be alert and awake and able to get out of that environment. Now, if you have a fire in a residence, you have potential for people being asleep, intoxicated, the list goes on in a residence on the different variables that you're going to find those occupants in. So your search profile starts to change a little bit for each one. Now, that being said, Cub Foods on a really bad fire, maybe it's progressed really pretty far and you're getting reports that people are inside. Does that search profile turn into a little bit more of a nightmare now too? Yeah. I mean, again, you go through the firefighter close calls and death reports, it happens a lot in those types of buildings, right? So we have to be very mindful of what we're coming across and what that building type is going to tell us. Anything else that we would want to gain from the building description? So type of construction, that might be an important thing to add, right? If it's lightweight versus, type 3 standard, whatever that might be, the differences are going to matter. A tilt slab construction versus, more of a standard construction, is that going to matter? Again, it talks about those collapse zones. Tilt slabs a lot more likely to maybe collapse on you. So again, even if it's not identified over the initial report, knowing it as incident command is important. And that goes back to knowing your building types and construction methods. So we kind of already hit on this: small, medium, large, very large. You can call it mega, that's fine too. Setback. So some of our houses, it could be a small house, right? But let's say it's 200-foot setback from the road. Does that change the size of that house? No. It is 100% the same size house. Now we need to add a little notifier to it with a large setback or with a 100-foot setback with a, because if I'm a chief, I'm going en route and I hear that first truck get on scene, I'm on scene of a very large house. Oh, cow, I didn't know we had any very large houses in our district. And you're going in to do a search on a defensive, whatever description you start to give, we start thinking, whoa, this is a big house. When we get on scene, it's not a big house. It's a small house, very large setback. We're going to attack that differently. We might have to do a 2.5 lay wide off and then do attack lines from the front yard, right? From the Alpha side, Charlie side, wherever our entrance point is. So the setback does not change the size. The setback just needs to be described as part of your size up. So building size, always the same. Setbacks need to be notified and identified. Are we always going to know it's 100-foot setback, 200-foot setback? Give it your best guess. Some you probably can't even see the house from the street, right? So you're not even always going to know. I think I just heard Ramsey or St. Francis. It was somebody, maybe even East Bethel, just had a call the other day for when they basically gave the size up. It's an impassable driveway, and we're looking at CAD. I mean, that was a deep setback. I mean, if you had to lay in from that, you're talking 400, 500, 600 feet of 2.5 that you're going to have to lay from the street in. So you might not be able to give that on your initial, so it's just going to be a large setback. So again, building description. We talked a little bit about single story. What's the difference between a single story and a story and a half? So right here, we're talking about story and a half, right? So we do have living space in that attic area or that secondary level, but it's not a full story of living space, right? We just have a portion of it. What is one thing that we're going to find more often than not or have to consider on a story and a half?
Knee walls.
Knee wall space. So, yep, you're going to have knee walls on either side, and those are great locations to hide fire and have extension in. So when I hear, and they're always right, they're always crammed full, aren't they? So story and a half. Again, just hearing that as an incident commander or another arriving unit, I'm already thinking story and a half. There's living space above, but there's also that extension or void space that we might have to consider as well as having exposure or extension into. We talked a little bit about it already, a 2-story, 3-story. I mean, really, we're just adding on more living space and potential areas that we're gonna have to address, right? The fire's down here to address. I don't know if people add on earlier. Is that different in residence?
Maverick.
Yeah, why?
Apartments are compartmentalized.
Compartmentalized, right? In an apartment, you're gonna have a lot less transfer of heat, smoke, products of combustion, right? They're designed around that. They're designed, now if everything works properly and they're maintained and all that. What should happen is that fire should generally stay at least on the floor, maybe a floor above of where that is on an apartment. On a house, if you have a fire down here, what do you have up here? Lots of smoke and possibly lots of heat and potential for a lot of transfer of extension up to that upper level, right? So giving those bits of information help us understand, without even seeing it, what are we going to need to address next, all right? We talked again a little bit about last week's split level. How do we identify, you get on scene of a split level? I generally just call it a split level. Or a split entrance, you can call it that as well. But if I'm calling the split level, I'm making the conscious decision in my head, and that's why I notify it as split level, as that there's going to be an upper level and a lower level, right? Instead of first floor, second floor. Because first floor, second floor, we've had it happen. I need you to go to the second or the first floor and check for extension in the attic space. They went to the lower level, considering that the first floor, and then checked the floor space, not the upper level, and check the attic space for extension. So it can be confusing where on a split level, it's not truly a first or second. It's more of an upper, lower, and then you may have like those sub basements inside of them as well. Okay. Do basements generally get included on a size up? I get on scene. Am I going to generally call out a basement as part of the floor?
I'd say it depends what kind of basement it is.
Depends, right? So maybe for whatever reason, yeah, maybe I'm arriving and this is the Charlie side of the house that I'm seeing and I can see the basement. Maybe that's pertinent as part of my size up. 99% of the time, we're not going to include anything about a basement, right? Because we're not going to know. That's what we're going to say for our 360 follow-up, but it is important. Just be mindful. I'm going to need that information for later. I'm going to start looking at this house and I can tell you right now, I'm going to assume, slab on grade, right? I'm already making assumptions. That's really what a size up is me getting on scene, taking a look at this. I'm going to start making assumptions.
Sure.
No, assumptions are never good in incident command and everything else, but it helps us build what my profile, what my understanding of this structure is going to be. And then I'm going to utilize all the other components, my CAN reports, my 360, all the other different components of an incident command to ensure that my assumptions are correct and that things are heading in the right direction. Okay.
But tuck under garages.
Tuck under garage is a great.
I mean, if you have a garage fire.
Yeah.
Right
So-
above a living space.
So yeah, basically, let's say on this one right here, you get on scene, this is front yard, and you've got a tuck under garage. So how big is that house? How many stories? If this is right here, this is at that roof line, that's your front yard.
It's gonna be- Well, if there's a basement, it's gonna be,
We don't count basements.
okay, we don't count, so it's gonna be 3.
2-story.
It's a 2-story.
Okay.
So, because technically this would be considered your basement, right? So it's a 2-story house with a tuck under garage. Okay.
So you're taking out that living space on the
So
bottom.
basically, if we're saying that this is our walk-up front door, our front door is right here, we're considering that our first floor and with a tuck under garage. Okay. Now, the question will also remain, a lot of our houses are built this way where we have living space above the garage. Is it wrong to call this a tuck under?
Under the living space.
Does it paint a good picture? If you hear tuck under, I would say maybe not, maybe it does.
Ah!
I'm not gonna take away points. Let me put it that way, all right? If you said it in a test.
Hello?
I'm not gonna take away points. So I understand what you're trying to get at. There's living.
I'm
space.
trying to do this.
I personally would call this a 3-story building, a 3-story residence. With
It's
living
a
space.
live training.
That's how I would describe that building. If you hear that, that's very clear, right? You have a very good picture on what that is. Where if I said, this is a 3-story building with a tuck under garage, you think, holy cow. It's
Oh.
3
Why are you
stories
hitting
up
the
with
door?
possibly a tuck under garage, that's pretty tall, so, you're like, I didn't know that we built them that high. So
So if there was nothing going on in the garage, would you even mention that?
potentially not.
3-story house, the fire show from the Bravo outside second floor.
Yep, so if I have no involvement with this structure and I can maybe see some smoke on the second floor, I might not include it at all. If I have involvement in the garage, I have a working fire in the garage. Now, is it pertinent for me to explain to you that there's fire in the garage with living spaces above? Absolutely. So I hate to say that sometimes the problem will dictate the building description. The building description should always maintain fairly consistent, right? If it's nothing showing versus a fire. But there's certain times that it's important to really describe certain components of it versus when it's not. If that makes sense.
I'm just thinking if it's not pertinent to the problem, why confuse the picture?
And that's the best way that I could have that described is don't add extra stuff if it's not needed, right? Keep it to the basics. 3-story, single family residence, you know, small. And even though this is a pretty big house, I would still call this a small. I can get a pre-connect.
I was gonna ask about that. It's like.
I'm fairly confident I can get a pre-connect. I mean, because these maybe have a 40-foot, 30-foot setback from the road. So I mean, you've got 150 feet basically from that front door to get pretty much throughout. If you called it medium, I gotta take away points. That's one of those borderline houses. You could maybe go medium on that. But again, that's where that problem will dictate maybe where some of that is. And keeping it short and sweet and to the point and getting everyone that clear picture is going to be important. So we'll around the room. What do we got up here? What type of residence? Single family.
2-story.
2-story. Small, medium, or large?
Small.
Small? Okay. What we got here? Small, single-story commercial. You agree with that? Seems pretty fair. Up one over in our top right.
Mega.
Yeah, we're talking about mega, right? I mean, this is our very large situation, right?
Multi-level.
And that is Medtronic. So would anybody have any issue if I said I'm arriving on scene to Medtronics?
I don't know what's the
I will tell you the one time that has caused an issue. All right, and be mindful. Sometimes it's the person. It's not always it's not always the situation. Fire came in for Medtronics. How many Medtronics buildings do you think we have in the area? More than you think. There's 2 or 3 just in Fridley. We had one in Spring Lake Park, and then we also have one in Mounds View, and the one in Spring Lake Park is now a church. So the problem is that the location right down from the street. Person went en route to Medtronics and drove down to Fridley. Because their version of Medtronics was different than that version of Medtronics. So you can use that. And again, if I say I'm arriving on scene at Target, we all have a pretty good, clear picture of what Target is, right? And even if I said, and we all knew what the right address was, if I told you I'm arriving at Medtronics in Mounds View, I have to be that specific, you would all have a pretty good idea of what I'm arriving to. Just be mindful, using that way to describe a building tends to get a little confusing for some people, okay? Not everyone, but just be mindful of that. That can have its drawbacks at times. What about over here? Yep. Right there. Right at Kohl's, right? And that's a great time to say Kohl's, right? I don't think anybody would have any issue. I'd say 90% of the Kohl's that I've been to look pretty much the same as this right here, right? Now, again, go back to where could that be confusing? When Kohl's was part of Northtown Mall, it would be confusing if I said I'm arriving at Kohl's. Potentially, and again, because arriving to a standalone Kohl's versus arriving at a mall can be potentially
Give
different.
the street name, you know, it'd be helpful too.
Exactly, and
I'm
that's
driving calls at
Yep.
Baltimore or
Yep.
whatever, you know.
absolutely, and that's, and maybe I'd get a little bit too specific or worrisome on that, but I'm just saying, be mindful of it. If there is a difference, sometimes there's always gonna be 1 or 2 people that find that difference. So, and what about in our bottom right over there?
Multi-tenant building.
3-story apartment, right? So I've heard multiple family residents. Is there anything wrong with multiple family? No, but I think apartment is a lot more specific, right? Personally, as like we said, if I can be as specific as possible without adding any extra verbiage, great. Because technically a multifamily, I could be talking about a townhome, I could be talking about a quadplex, I could be talking about apartment. Did everyone get a different picture in their head when we said each one of those things? So be mindful, the building description that you give is going to paint that picture in other people's heads. So just be mindful of how you describe that. So we talked about all that. What is the difference between commercial and industrial? I didn't catch it. What'd you say?
Contents of the building?
Contents of the building. We agree with that? Would you expect to find certain things at a commercial building versus an industrial?
Yeah.
Industrial, I think of more machinery, more chemicals, more making things. Commercial is generally more selling or storing of things, right?
Hazardous and industrial.
More hazards in industrial, right? So those are some of those buildings that can sometimes flirt those fine lines of, am I at commercial or am I at industrial? You might not get it right on your initial size up. What do you need to do then? Correct it in a follow-up, a 360, whatever, at whatever time that you find that right information, because getting that clear identification of the building type will start to paint that picture in everyone's head. What is the difference between an apartment building versus an apartment complex? Yeah, this would be a complex right here. I've got multiple buildings on one site. So you can have multiple buildings. You can have one big giant giant layout versus, the apartment from the last slide that we saw, that was more of a standalone, right? If you've seen of that standalone apartment building versus an apartment complex. Look at it this way. If I'm going to call it a building, it's a standalone. If it's a complex, the complexity has risen in the sense that access, getting around, maybe parking and just different locations to that building are going to start to be compromised a little bit. You're going to have multiple buildings, layouts on that one big plot of land is the way to look at it. All right. And that is something to think of, because if I arrive to a building, a lot of our crews will start to think of just arriving to a big house fire, right? I've got, probably the street right in front. I can do this. A complex, staging starts to become in that question again. We talked about last week. Where do I stage on a complex versus where do I stage on a building?
Yeah. That when you say complex, that brings to mind like the Georgetown apartment.
Georgetown Apartments.
Huge, massive.
That's a great example of an apartment complex.
Many
Even, I'm not blanking, the one right up here. Oak Grove? No,
Oak Park.
Yeah. Carriage Oaks, thank you. I was gonna say it's not Oak Park. Yeah, Carriage Oaks, that's another apartment complex. I mean, again, time that you got multiple buildings laid out with, basically you start to get a parking lot effect, where buildings are built around it. Now, complexes can have the added benefit of, again, you might gain extra space on a complex. You might have more parking lots that you can utilize to get assets into and access the building more readily. It's not always the case, but sometimes you can. All right, so just be mindful. So we talk about problem descriptions. We already hit enough on the building description. How do we describe the problem? Okay. So basically when I'm saying describe the problem, you got to tell me what is the problem, where is the problem, and where is it going to go? All right. So right here, what's the problem? Working fire, right?
Second floor. Also.
Second floor, out the side. Where is it going?
No,
Yeah.
nobody knows.
So, and this is the one I look at. I don't see any signs of extension of the attic space. I'm not going to start saying, I believe I've got possible extension of the attic. I wouldn't include that one on this one, but it's something I'd be mindful of, is that it is starting to encroach a little bit on that attic space, right? I'd consider that's the next tactical objective in my mind. Might not include it in my initial size up, but it's a tactical objective. What else do I have? Smoke from the front door. Does that change my size up at all? Does it change your thought process for what your assignments are going to be? So just because something looks different doesn't mean that it needs to be included. Again, let's get to the point. I've got a working fire off the side, second floor, right? But I as command know I've got smoke throughout. All right, I've got smoke. Does smoke generally want to travel down? Right? I've got a mindset now that somehow either that environment got so charged that it actually pushed smoke down. Why would it be that charged when I've got that much venting? Right? So again, start thinking about fire behavior now as well. That fire is doing something that you wouldn't necessarily expect. Now, there's potential that this whole environment was filled and then these just breached right before you got there, right? And you could still just have some residual smoke down there. Either way, I know sending a crew up to that second floor, they've at least got smoke on that first floor. They're not going to have a quick, easy access to that second floor. Okay.
Smoke coming out the door is lighter than coming out the window.
It is lighter. So I also know that I more than likely don't have a fire on that first floor, right? Could you still encounter some fire on that first floor? Absolutely. Absolutely you could. but my flow path is pretty much telling me that I've got probably more of an inlet down here and more of an outlet up there. All right, my fire's more than likely on that second floor. I've got good access, but they might be slightly impeded, and there might be some heat and residual smoke on that first floor from whatever happened before we got there. How about on this one? Where's the fire problem? First floor, smoke, working fire outside. I call this still a working fire. Is there anything wrong with calling the smoke showing from outside first floor? No. I potentially believe if there's that much smoke, something was working or could still be working at that point, right? I don't want to start creating a false sense of security where people start to think, oh, there's just a little bit of smoke, we're good, you know, whereas it's that burnt food. That's not burnt food, right? No, that's beyond that. I mean, it couldn't, maybe it's already put itself out or whatever, but still, I like to keep it as simple as possible. You know, you got nothing showing, working fire, defensive fire, and you can also say light smoke showing, right? I wouldn't consider that light smoke. It's a little bit heavier than light smoke. Go to working fire, right? It's close enough. It's one of those in-between ones. Yeah.
Say light smoke would be, maybe smoke would be like a white, light gray, you know.
I would generally
fairly,
consider that to be more of when I describe a problem, it almost starts to describe what I'm going to do with it. Light smoke is more of an investigation. Light smoke is going to be grab a water can and a tick and go see what you got going on. I don't know, depending on the crew and maybe if there's a couple more variables here. Do I want my first crew in just to grab a water can and a tick and go check that out? I'd like them to have a line. If I'm pulling a line, it's a working fire. Right? I just like to keep it simple.
It's not turbulent like.
No, it's not turbulent. That's not charged, and I'm not worried, but it has a potential, right? Because maybe that just opened up, and maybe it might kick off. That's my job as incident command to continue to evaluate that, right? And ensure that I'm setting in the crews in appropriately with the right resources and the right tasks, that they won't be overwhelmed if something does change. So again, I kind of go back to what are the things that we described. You've got nothing showing, light smoke or smoke showing, a working fire. Working fire is generally going to be more of that room and contents, maybe a little bit beyond the room and contents on a defensive fire. What type of fire conditions do we have here? We'll start with this one right here. What do we got? So that's an industrial. So that was more of a, yep, that's a working fire in an industrial building. So this one was a car parts and car shop, basically. So yeah, more of an industrial area, but it was definitely a good working fire. Is that a lot of fire? Yeah, I wouldn't consider that defensive. Are we going to go in and go put that out? It's a working fire. The only time that we use defensive is if it's not an environment that we can go into. That has become a fully involved environment. It's not fully involved. It is a industrial building. It's, you know, cement block building. It's going to stand pretty well. It's also going to hold a ton of heat. So you got to be very mindful of what you're doing when you're putting people into there. What do we got over here? Top right. Tuck under garage. Here you go. Good use. Because again, we can kind of see that this front yard kind of goes up a little bit. So I think that's beneficial to maybe call that one a tuck under.
That's a complex. University.
That one actually is off the J. That one was, yep, that one was off the J. What kind of a fire? Working garage fire, right? Now, this has already obviously been knocked down a little bit, but I'm sure you can kind of picture a little bit. You had a lot more fire coming out and extending to that upper level. All right. You get on scene, you got a garage, that much involvement coming out and extending up to the upper level. How would you describe that problem?
Garage fire extending to the upper, second floor.
Yeah.
Or second floor.
Yeah, right. So I've got a working garage fire extending to the floor above, living space above, second floor, however you want to describe it. That's part of your size.
Would you specify if it's an unit or a mill unit?
Depends. On this one, it was just a quadplex. So they're all technically end units, but yes, if you had like a row of townhomes, is it important to know if it's in the middle versus on the end? Yeah. Absolutely, right? So you know, on this one, you could say, you know, if we're in the Bravo end unit, even though it's a quadplex, I'm sorry, Delta end unit, based on your size up, just so everyone knows, I've got a quadplex and we're on this end of it, you know, or I've got fire in the Alpha Delta unit of a quadplex. that kind of explain, I'm in that Alpha Delta corner and kind of help out. The way I dug in a little bit on this, if I've got a ton of fire coming out here, and this moves more into the strategy side of things, I might be defensive originally on this and offensive in the residence, right? So if I've got that much fire coming out of the garage, am I gonna save anything in that garage? If I've got fire that's just extending into the living space, am I gonna save anything in that living space? Potentially people, definitely property, all right? Now, I'm not gonna put property above people, but if you don't know, you gotta get people in there, right? You gotta get your crews in there to start checking for that. So my priority now, and again, just from my size up, seeing that I've got fire going from one area, do I care a ton about a garage? Again, we gotta put it out, we gotta get in there, we gotta check it out, but I really need to get into up here, right? Because there's potential that people are at risk, and there's property for us to still save in there. How about down here? What do we got? What's our fire condition? That one's kind of hard to tell. It's, yep, that one was garage that had extended to the residence. So what kind of fire type?
So was it detached garage?
Attached. It was an attached garage. So how would you describe that problem?
Working garage fire extended into the home.
Perfect. Outside first floor. Again, if it's a single story residence, that sometimes gets a little redundant, but
That would.
again, it drives the picture home, right?
And a detached garage would be an important descriptor as well.
And that would be a great thing. So we don't always describe the garage, right? Some of our houses are attached, they're detached garages. If I arrive on scene of a detached garage, but there's a fire in the house, am I going to say that it's a detached garage? Probably not. I'm probably going to bypass the garage entirely. I might, if it's starting to extend or get towards that side of the building, I might see there's an exposure on the delta end. Exposure
Why am I
being the
smelling
garage.
weed?
But if it's not pertinent to that scene, that's not going to paint that picture for everyone. I might just leave that out. So it's a great point.
Obviously, you guys went defensive on, did you guys go defensive on that in the get-go or?
So I would call that more of a transitional attack.
Okay.
I still would not call this a defensive
Right.
fire.
No, that's what I
No,
was thinking.
so, no, now our initial tactics were defensive on the garage and offensive in the residence. But it was not a defensive fire in that mindset that we're just gonna stand by. Airport hangar, what kind of a fire do we have here?
Large
Defensive fire,
warehouse.
right? It's throughout the whole thing. On scene of a hangar fire as a defensive fire. You can kind of continue along your description right there, but as soon as you hear a hangar fire and it's defensive, this is the picture that you should see in your head, right? That, defensive is not going to be this coming out of a hangar fire. That's still a working fire in that hangar. This is defensive. That entire thing is involved. I cannot put people in there and I will not put people in there. Surround and drowned, and go from there. This one's kind of hard to see. Again, this one was actually more of a row of townhomes, kind of like you were saying. This one was the end unit, Bravo side, in a garage with living space above.
Stop, I don't want to smell it.
You wanna give it?
Whatever you're doing.
That's what the house is.
Huge fire, lots of fire. Yeah, fully involved.
Use one extinguisher.
Yep. Three more at it.
Extinguisher bound.
Yep. But yeah, again, we've got working garage fire extension to the floor above. Yep. And maybe even we've got exposure as well, right? So we've got extension to the exposure unit on the Delta VR. So if this is our Alpha side, this is our Bravo end unit, there's nothing more this way. Which unit would this be? Delta 1.
Delta 1, that's right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So Delta 1, Delta 2, Delta 3, as you would go along. This was actually the fire that I was talking about last time. There were the same units on the opposite side. So when they said go check on the Charlie side, there was confusion again. This was new to us at the time. Is it Charlie 1, Charlie 2? What does that mean? No, Charlie, go figure out. You run that.
Yeah.
Here's your crews. You know where they're at, and you take care of that and give that back to command.
Going back to your comments,
Yeah.
you don't have to go back to it,
Okay.
but just after looking at that one, it just shows the importance of doing your 360, because we have no idea if those townhomes go out, if they have a slider out the back, or if there's actually units on the back side that you have to be.
Absolutely. So I love it. You're already a segue into why the 360 is going to be so important. What snapshot I give up here, is that going to stay true after a 360? So much can change, and it's not always the fire conditions or a patient hanging out of the window. Sometimes it's just literally the configuration of the building and the access that your crews are going to have to it. And that's enough of a reason to get a 360. So we talked about the problem locations, we're talking floor level and the building side. What floor level is this fire on?
It looks like it's in the attic.
It's definitely in the attic. I can tell you from experience, this was on the first floor. It was small room and contents fire that basically blew into the attic, okay? So stating that we had a room and contents, working room and contents fire with full attic involvement should paint that picture that I've got a small fire on that first floor that is now fully involved in that attic space, all right? And then the problem extension. Has it extended? Is there exposure concerns? Will it, or do you believe it is about to extend? And that's why I always say, I've got fire on the first floor, possibly extending to the second floor. And that's if you got flames coming out and going above. You saw some of those other pictures where the garage fire's coming out, it's going to that story above. Sometimes you can't tell if it's extended or not, and that's why you just include possible extension to the floor above. All right, and that little bit of definition will start to provide that clarity to other crews that, all right, where are the tactical objectives going to be? So we've kind of worked through the building description, the problem description. Now you need to start stating, what are we going to do about it? So all this is built around considering that we are on, let's say, the first driving engine, right? Crew of 4, you're the company officer. Your job was to give a great building description. Your job was to do a great job of describing the problem that we have. It's also your job to assign that crew that you're a part of, okay? Any other ideas on what those initial orders might be for that first crew? I've kind of listed out some. Sometimes it's fire attack, sometimes it's search and rescue. A lot of the times we just kind of combine those with that first search, rescue, fire control. Forcible entry might be that first initial order for a crew. Defensive operations or exterior operations. Why do I differentiate the two? Defensive and exterior.
Defensive typically means it's a larger fire or structure. Exteriors, you can be waiting for more personnel. So
Yep. So defensive operations to me means that you have assumed a defensive strategy because the fire conditions are defensive. As soon as you start using the terminology defensive, the conditions need to match that. Now, if I'm using exterior operations where we're fighting it from the exterior, that might just be a shortage of crew, wanting to kind of do that transitional attack, knock it down a little bit before you make entry. All right. So how we describe what we're going to do is important. All right. I always, will end my incident command with, and I will be completing a 360. And I like to have that in there because then everyone knows I'm the one that's responsible for it. I'll go do it. I'm not going to assign it to somebody else. It is going to get done. I will do it. And that's why I like to include that as one of my actions being assigned. All right. What else? Is there anything else that you guys can think of that would be a task that you might assign to your first arriving crew?
Grab a hydrant, probably.
Water supply, great.
Ladders.
If I get on scene of that and I'm the first engine, nobody else is there yet, and I've got a hydrant 2-3 houses down. Do you think it's a good idea to maybe that I grab that water supply myself if I've still got maybe another 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes before my next engine gets there? That's an appropriate time. Not every time will we do that, but there are certain times with certain fire conditions that might be the most appropriate thing for us to do. So there's so many other things, like you're saying, grab a ladder, do this, do that. There's so many different things that you can be, but I just try to generalize it and kind of keep you guys in somewhat of an idea of, keep it simple. What are the first things that a crew would have to do when they get on scene? It's really going to depend on what you see and what you evaluate as the most tactical objective that needs to be completed.
What do you prefer, forward lay from a hydrant, or do you like to see what's going on and then have your engineer or somebody else go grab a hydrant after you've placed?
So we've been fortunate in the sense that when we respond, more often than not, our first engine will bypass the hydrant and go to the scene. And our second engine would lay in. That's why we have them stage at the hydrant. Generally, our timing has worked out well enough where that has been the most beneficial way to do it. We've been talking to some of our crews and letting them know, you got a good call in the smoke, and maybe you're in a part of the district that, you're going to be the first one there for a little bit. It might make more sense for you to grab that hydrant on the way in. So I think a lot of it's dependent on the situation. I come from the mindset of prefer to get that first unit on there, start getting some lines out. This is also coming from a truck that had 750 gallons of water. We could start doing some damage before, you know, we really did run out of water. So, and we generally had that next crew pretty close behind us that was gonna be able to lay in and start supporting what we were doing. So I think it's very situational. It's very dependent on the resources that you have coming, how far out they are, and what fire conditions and building structure you actually have in front of you. So as much as that's a not answer, I think it's the best I can do for you. Sorry.
It's a political.
Yeah, exactly.
There's one.
Yep, yep.
For us, I think it probably comes down to crew size.
And that's a variable that we haven't talked about. Absolutely,
How
right?
long do we wait before we go, and when we go, we might only have your engineer, your officer, and then maybe a crew of 3.
Mhm.
So you try to, you know, and get water on it right away, and then just make sure you announce that you need that second arriving unit to grab a hydrant.
Yeah, well, let's talk about a real bad day. Let's just say it's a crew of 2 on that truck. My first task, the most beneficial thing that I can do for that scene, start setting up for the next crew to get there. And some of the best things that I can do is get a water supply established and have maybe the lines pulled off. And by the time I've done that, I'm exhausted. That next crew can come and just grab what I've already established and go put the fire out. Which sucks. None of us want to see somebody else grab the line that we just pulled. But in the respect of customer service and the resources that we have available, we have to make those best decisions possible that we can accomplish successfully. So I think when we start talking about actions being assigned, I think you do need to have somewhat of a mindset for the resources that you have available. What can we be successful in completing? It's not just what needs to be completed, but what can I also successfully complete? If you have a crew of 4 on that engine and you arrive on scene and you got light smoke showing from this building right there, can you safely have a crew grab a line and make entry? I'll say it depends. Depends. So 2 in, 2 out, right? So if me as incident commander, if I'm staying out with my engineer and we're both fully geared and ready to act as that outside crew on a condition that warrants it. Now, this is not Chad saying, go ahead, you have a free pass, go ahead and play every time that you want. If this is, you know, a condition that you warrant that it's safe for that crew of 2 to make entry with a crew of 2 ready to go outside, that can still take place. Let's say you got a crew of 3 on that truck. Can you do it? Now, that being said, you look in the house and you see a little trash can on fire. Is it okay to go in there and put that out?
Get it from the outside.
Very political answer. I like it. So again, situational warrant on what we're going to accept. What risk am I willing to take as an incident commander to put my crew in? We know 2 in, 2 out is the rule, right? Now, I'm not saying you've been given the authority to break that. I'm just saying that you've been given the authority that 2 in, 2 out needs to be adjusted to the risk and the situation that you've been given. Because if somebody's laying on the floor right inside here and you got a crew of 3, you have to wait. You have to go get that person, right? Now you need to be mindful of that crew and what you're accepting of the risk on that, right? So we need to kind of combat that as well with your assignment.
What about if if you don't have an all clear, you get to the scene and talk to, say, the homeowner. There is one person that's unaccounted for, they believe is in a bedroom. Would you still wait for more crews to show up before you try to enter?
That's a great question. Because I think, again, that kind of depends on the problem that I'm seeing and the location that they've given me for what that patient is potentially in. Is it viable? Is it in an area that the fire has extended to that location? Is it completely removed from that? Do I have time to wait? Not saying that I want to sit there and wait every time I'm told that there's a patient, but do I have to because of my resources? And does it make sense on that scene? More often than not, if I am told, hey, my baby is in that room right there, you're going to have to try to hold me down from keeping me to get in there, right? I don't care what the resources are, but we need to weigh that against what risk that we're taking with that again, all right? If I get on scene of this right here and somebody says, hey, you know, Nana sits in that chair right inside the front door. She's right inside of there. We're going to go in there and try to go take a peek, right? We're going to be very cautious on our approach, but we're going to take the risks necessary to make sure that we're protecting ourselves and the citizens that we're there to protect as well, right? So everything that you do, as much as we say that firefighting is black and white, there's 2 in, 2 out, there's this, there's that. There's a lot of gray, but you as the incident commander, guess what? You have the authority to make that decision, but you're also stuck with the responsibility. Whatever you did and determined can be held against you, all right? So you can't just do it for the fun of the game, right? I want to go do this because it's awesome. I did this because I measured the risks and I believed it to be the safest thing for myself and the resident, right? So you have to weigh those every single time.
In that situation, though, I mean, that's something that we can say on the radio. The homeowner says there's another occupant inside
Yeah.
this location.
Mhm.
Be prepared to step up and.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's absolutely information that you would give out right away. And I think, you know, that can kind of give some of that information out there. And I think we also need to be mindful of the length of time that we take to set up. You get on scene, your crew gets out, they start to get ready, they start to pull the line to the front door, you're out there completing your 360. How many times have we charged that line and that second crew wasn't right behind us? Right? You're generally not on scene too long without that next crew getting there. So generally, if you're that first arriving truck, especially with our box alarm agreements, I mean, now that Lexington's right down the road for you guys down at Station 1, and you know, Station 4 is right there. Lino Lakes isn't too far down the road. So again, we've got a lot of resources that get there fairly quick that we're generally not left too long by ourselves. So you have to weigh that as well as how quick is somebody coming behind me? Am I the only one here? Is somebody coming down the road? What can I establish safely with that next level of resource coming in to back me up? That makes sense. It's a lot of gray. It's a lot of gray.
It's also important as officer of the truck to know who's with you and their abilities.
Absolutely. And so again, we talked about variables on resource, maybe staffing levels, but is there also a variable on crew ability? And I'm not trying to say, well, I think we all can say that there's certain individuals that you can trust with certain tasks and some that you maybe don't trust as well. You know, there's always that one person that can do extrication great. And maybe that other person that knows how to do patient care better than that person. Same thing on a fire scene. People, we have to try to play to their strengths. And if you know they're not great at search and rescue because they're still just fresh out of the academy, and I got to go into a blacked out environment just with that person and try to go rescue someone, that's a variable that you're going to have to add to your equation that accounts for your authority and your responsibility on that scene. Okay, so that's another great component of that. And you guys wanted to be company officers and do all this fun incident command stuff. So, so every time that we get that assignment, we've gone through that tactical objective on what needs to be completed, and it comes out as a task location and objective. Okay. So engine 1 gets on scene. I do a great size up because you guys have practiced it so much. You guys are going to do great size ups. Perfect. You're going to go do a 360 and you want them to lay a line. We're just going to say lay a line. We're going to say task location objective. All right. Engine 1, I need you to lay a line. Alpha side, first floor, search, rescue, fire control. Okay. So now I know what I'm doing, where I'm going, and what the objective of what I was supposed to do is. So if I just said grab a line and go alpha side, first floor, that's playtime. I'm just gonna go start fighting fire, right? Because that's what we do. We're moths to the flame. That's what we're there to go do. But if me as incident command really wanted to ensure that we were getting that search done first because I was given some other information, that is not part of my tactical objective. I might not complete that. I might miss that. Okay. That makes sense on how we include all those components. So I will also say this. Are we going to assign people into the residence before a 360 has been completed? No. So I would say an appropriate assignment, maybe for engine 1, I'm going to complete a 360, so this is still part of my initial size up. Engine 1 will be laying a line to the alpha side. You guys understand what I'm saying is laying a line to the alpha side. I just need you to prep. Just get that line laid, flaked out. By the time I'm done with my 360, you're probably just about getting it flaked out. What I do is I allow time for you guys to set up and get ready so you guys aren't just sitting on the truck going, man, he takes a long time to walk around the building. You know, let's use your time effectively. I'm assuming from my initial size up that we're going to make entry through that alpha door. I did not charge that line because I needed to complete that 360 because maybe it was a basement fire on the Charlie side and I'm going to have you redeploy to the Charlie side. Now, if it's a dry line flaked out in the front yard, is that pretty easy to move around? Absolutely. So we can still be effective in that order, but we've started to establish what we're going to start doing. So I'm going to declare a strategy. Offensive, defensive, and a quick hit or a transition. We all pretty clear on what those are. Offensive, I've got people going in. Defensive, nobody's going in because the structure is so compromised. So it's not just that it's a good working fire and I don't have enough crew to go in, this is a defensive fire that we do not have any reason or ability to make entry on. And a quick hit is fire like this right here. We're gonna hit that fire and then we're gonna make entry. A little bit of water on this should do quite a bit of a knockdown. It's just a room and contents. It's gonna pull it back into that room. And we're gonna make entry, go finish it off, check for extension. Yeah. So those are really the strategies that you should be kind of finishing up with a incident or initial size up. We say that we're gonna assume and name command. So at the end of it, maybe you're, captain one or engine one, whatever your assignment is, that unit needs to assume command. So it's usually a statement of I will be assuming command, engine one will be assuming command, captain 10 will be assuming command, whatever that is at the end of your transmission. Name that command. More often than not, what you'll hear is Centennial command, SBM command, Ramsey command. We usually just name command based off of the organization. The proper way that we should be doing it is based off of street. So if I'm on Able Street, if I'm on whatever street that is, you're going to name it off of that street.
And that would make it more clear if you got another incident going.
100%. So if anything else pops up, even a car accident, Centennial command, well, which Centennial command? And we've had this happen. I'll be SBM command. Well, now another call comes in. It's a lift assist, and they get on scene and dispatch from SBM command. Well, which SBM command? You got two incidents going on. It's a lot more clear if it's SBM Able Street command. And we usually just keep SBM in there just because does Able go beyond SBM? Absolutely. It goes through the entire Anoka County. So I've always just kept it SBM Street command. It'd be the same for you guys, Centennial Street command. Just keep it consistent like that. And then I don't need to have it in there, but it's something to be mindful of. The command mode. We talked about it a little bit. If you're a working command, is that an important piece to have in an initial size up? Absolutely. 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 If you've got a command post established, is that an important piece to have? Might not be in the initial size up, but it might be something that's important to say a command post was established inside of engine one. And where that command post is located. It's important, especially if it starts out as a working command and then you transition back to a command post. People want to know, okay, command was inside or working or doing whatever, and then they get on scene and they want to do a face-to-face or wait, command's over here. No, command's been established, will be in the alpha side, inside of engine one. Resource management. Talk a little bit about how do we determine if we need to upgrade or downgrade an assignment. You get on scene, part of that initial size up could be give me a second box, could be go ahead and hold everyone at quarters, could be, or everything that you were assigned on a first box was more than enough. How do you make that decision as incident command?
It's bird food. We're gonna.
Right? So
That's
going back,
common.
going back to everything that we just established, the building type, the problem that we have, and the resources that we have coming, and the actions that need to take place are going to determine the resources that we need on that scene, right? So what are the assignments? Do I have to complete search, rescue, fire control on multiple floors? Do I need to have fire attack on multiple locations? Do I need to have forcible entry established? Do I need to have, you need to start tallying up when you're on scene, what are the tactical objectives that I need accomplished on this scene? And do I have enough resources to match what that is? And not just enough to match it, but also back them up. Okay, so I generally like to think you got maybe 5 or 6 trucks coming on a first box, give or take. It's not always the same, and that's the difficulties that we're all going to have. Is you're going to have roughly that, and that's including all of our mutual aid that comes and everything else. Is that generally enough if you get on scene of a working fire in a single-story, single-family residence? Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it. You got to get one of my trucks is going to have to do a search and rescue, fire control. Somebody's going to have to back them up. Somebody's going to have to be on deck, and then I can kind of hit some staging locations. That's 5, 6 trucks right there. Right. So I've got a crew inside, a crew backing them up, a crew outside, and then I've got 3 crews that are staged. So I got 5 or 6 trucks coming, and that's really the tactical objectives I have up front. I've got enough resources. What if I have a 2-story with fire extending from the first up to the second and into the attic space, and I need to get a crew on the first floor, a crew on the second floor, crew pulling attic space, a crew searching the basement because I got reports that there's somebody down in there, and then I have to get on deck, and then I have to back them up. Do Do I have enough on a,
You'll have to double it.
you're gonna have to go to a second, possibly even a third, depending on how many resources you need to fill. Okay, so I want you to be mindful when you're doing a size up, how many tactical objectives are going through your head? How many assignments do I have to have completed? If I arrive on scene and this seems like, hey, yep, I need search, rescue, fire control, back them up, get on deck. That's really my mindset up front. First box is probably enough. If you've got multiple fire control locations, multiple searches to consider, you know, anytime that you're getting above and beyond that initial abilities of the first box, you need to go to that second box. Because if you've used every single crew that was available to you and then decided it's time for a second box, how long is it going to take for that second box to get there?
You lost.
Yep, and then we start talking again about, we go back to that 2 in, 2 out rule. I need to match my resources outside that I have inside to be able to properly rescue and reinforce those crews. If I'm not able to have that on scene, I'm starting to put you guys at jeopardy.
When you throw in time of day into that, what if it's a holiday weekend, you know, you got
Absolutely.
multiple people gone, you pull up, you think it's the first box, but then you start hearing trucks going around with only 2 people.
It's another variable. So if your resources need to match, not just the trucks that are there, but the crew size as well, right? So, and I can say from experience that this is before we had boxing, but during the day here at SBM, we staff 2 stations, and then we also have City Hall that's staffed. Well, there's certain days that the City Hall might have a holiday that we don't, so we're staffed. So now we're down to 2 stations instead of 3. And a fire came in, and before I was even on scene, I could see a column, and I said, go ahead and start Coon Rapids. Because I knew we were already a truck down and we already had a good working fire. Let's go ahead and start another one. And that was just when you're just getting an initial assignment. I think we had AutoWay at the time. So it was going to be an engine, a ladder from us, and an engine from Fridley. And I'm like, I can see a good column. I need at least another truck started right now before we can even, you know, establish what we're going to get done. So that mindset needs to play into that factor as well. And we're not always going to know that up front. You know, you might not know, oh, it's a holiday weekend. I know I'm a truck down today. You might not. You might have to wait until you start hearing some of these resources checking in route and kind of going, that's not enough. That's not enough. That go ahead and give me a second box. Like you said, time of year, not even just time of day, time of year. Is there times that we need more resources on scene just because of weather, just because of temperature, just because of, you know, the strains and stresses that we're putting on our crews? I can't go through you guys nearly as much in the middle of August as I can in May. Just because in August, on a hot day, you guys are going to get tired after a couple of rotations, where in May, it might not be as bad, right? So those factors need to play into that as well. It's not always just those initial size up components. Some of it's going to be the other factors that are a part of it. All right, so we're going to put all of that together after I just rambled that entire time and told you guys we could do some practice. So this is our incident right here. All right. We're going to assume that we've got a Centennial first box alarm assignment. All right. You guys are going to be on engine 11. You're the first arriving truck. It's at 29 Circle Drive in Circle Pines. You're the first arriving company officer on engine 11.
The size of a Circle Pines house.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a Sanibel house.
Right? Fair point. But you're the first arriving truck. You got a crew of 4. All right. Who wants to go ahead and give a crack at this? Put it all together. Give me a building description, problem description, assignments that you're going to complete, assume and name command, resource allocation, strategy. Who wants to go for it? Don't all do it at the same time. I don't need
No,
that.
I'm waiting for a blank.
Oh, understood. Understood. You'll get your moment now. You had to bring your, you had to open your mouth. You'll get your moment now.
I mean, if you're coming from Station 4, you might.
Yeah. Well, this might actually be a Station 4 resident. Anyone? Do I have to point somebody else? You want to go for it?
Dispatch to 10-11.
Go ahead.
Arriving on scene, small 2-story single family residence showing kind of working fire, second story outside. Field investigating command, Centennial engine 11, be performing a 360 to follow. And command to Centennial engine 11.
Go ahead.
Could you lay a line to the front door, be completing a 360? On the 360, give the update on that.
That sound pretty good? Great. So all that conversation, you can just do it like that, right? So think about all that we just talked about. We have to condense all that down and make it something that we can all understand, something that we can all picture without seeing that picture. Okay? Arriving, small, two-story, single-family residence. Does that mean the right thing to everyone? Does that match that? Absolutely. Did we need to include that it was an attached garage? No, no, absolutely not. Keep moving along because it did not pertain to this incident whatsoever. So I agree 100% with that. You got a working fire, second story off side, right? Working fire, second story off side. Okay. You are completing a 360 and assuming commit. Right? Reach back out to engine 11. I need you to go ahead and lay a line off side front door while he completes the 360. Does everyone have a good understanding of the task location objective of what he's doing? Okay. Strategy on that one? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I didn't say that now.
See, there we go. All right, so
That's
that's okay. So again, we're offensive and you're assuming circle drive. Okay. Absolutely, there's possible, right? It's possible. I know I need to check it. So even before we go into the 360, even before we go into anything else, what are the tactical objectives that you guys see on this incident right here that we're gonna have to address?
Quick hit on that. Transitional tag.
So you absolutely good. Yep. Yep. What are the tactical objectives? What are the things that I need checked off my list before we can go home? Search, rescue, fire control. What else? Make entry. We have to check for extension in that attic space, right? And the spaces around. So checking for extension. What else we gotta get done? Yeah. Overhaul. So now we're starting to run into the things that, what are the big things up front? Search, rescue, fire control, and check for extension. Those are the big things that I look at this and we need to get, yep. And those are the things that we need to do up front that will protect people and prevent the property from getting any more damaged, right? That's really what we're there for. After that, I'm gonna have to start considering ventilation. After that, I'm gonna have to start considering utilities. After that, I'm gonna start considering salvage and overhaul. After that, XYZ, go down the list, right? I'm not so worried about those things up front. And I don't want you guys to have to worry about them so much as a company officer first arriving. We're talking about the first 5 minutes. That's really what we're grading you on, and that's really what we're trying to set you up for here to understand and process. All right. So don't get so lost in, you know, and I'm not saying that I heard it from anybody's sim or whatever, but I've seen enough of these where people get on scene and I need police to shut down traffic on this street and I need this and I need, there might be times that that's important. On this small residential street, I'm not so worried about that as my first 5 minutes. I need you to focus on those tactical objectives that are going to possibly save someone and keep this from getting a lot worse, which in turn will keep all of our crew a lot safer, right? So if we have mindsets to keep this from getting worse, mindsets to protect the people inside, we're protecting ourselves as well. Okay. Is this a beautiful thing to see?
Yeah.
Fire hydrant in the front yard?
Oh,
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So that takes some of that mindset out. And it's one thing that we don't talk enough about. And it's not something that you might deal with, and we talked a little bit, maybe you might deal with in your initial size up. You might even say in your initial size up, engine 11 is securing a water supply. I believe it's important that you say it out loud, you say it on the radio, because it creates that mindset again for everyone that's coming in, knows what objectives have been completed. Water supply is an objective that we need to complete to ensure all those other important things, right? I can't fight fire, I can't do those searches, I can't protect the property without a good water supply. The next driving truck might still think it needs to be done. If I say it over the radio, engine 11 is securing a water supply, everyone knows that tactical objective has been complete. I will stage a different hydrant in case they need that one pulled in for a ladder or secondary water supply. Maybe this one came up dead. You know, it starts to complete that circle for everyone else that is not there. So 360 report. Before we do that, we're still fresh on these size ups. Let's do a couple more. All right, Phil.
Oh, boy.
It's a blame one.
Yeah, that's very.
All right.
Blackout conditions, definitely defensive.
There we go. A little dark, apologize for that. Go ahead and give me your size up on that. I'll see if I can change it.
Dispatch from Tower 3.
Go ahead, SPM Tower 3.
We're arriving on scene to small single family home. We've got a working fire on the Delta, Bravo Charlie side. Tower 3 is going to be laying a line for fire extinguishment. Get me on up here.
It's all right.
So we'll be laying a line for fire extinguishment. We will,
What else needs to be said? Think about it.
I know.
Come on, guys. What
Tower
else
3
needs to be said?
Tower 3 is investigating and in command. I don't know what we're
No, that's all
doing
right.
command is because
You don't have the street address
Yeah,
for
the
this one,
street.
so that's all right.
at 360 to follow.
Practice. Why we're doing this, practice, 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 practice. I don't expect perfection, all right? We're talking our way through this, and that's why we're doing all this tonight. So, arriving, small, single-family residence. What did we miss?
2-story.
2-story.
Okay.
So, yep, could be a split. It's kind of hard to tell in this picture. You got a tree blocking you, so could be either one, right?
Right.
And you said, I think you said you got a working fire Bravo Charlie corner, right? We all agree that we've got a working fire Bravo Charlie corner? Yep. Okay. What was the next?
We'll be laying a line for fire extinguishment. We'll have, Tower 3 will have, is it all investigating and in command?
Assuming command.
Assuming command.
That-
With 360 to follow.
Yeah. I mean, is that the majority of the components that you need to have in a size up? You're giving me a snapshot of what you are arriving to. That's your job. That's as a first arriving company officer, just explain to me what you're seeing, what the problem is, what you're going to do about it, who's in command, and what's your strategy.
Right. And after my 360, I can go into my strategies and, what my next truck can do,
Absolutely, because from this view right now, thinking about tactical objectives, what do I need to accomplish? What do you assume that this fire is right now? Just from your snapshot from the street. Garage or shed. I like that you said garage or shed. I could have garage involvement. Some other signs that are telling me that I maybe don't have garage involvement. Because there's no smoke along the eave, no smoke from the garage, no smoke on the house. I've got a plume of smoke back on that back corner. Looks like it's the garage. I don't know. I don't know for sure.
Would it have helped to paint the picture that you have the Bravo Charlie side of the garage? I don't know if that was announced instead of the house.
Could, you could say, possible working fire on the garage, attached garage, Bravo Charlie says it costs, right? So again, going back to, do we say if it's an attached garage or not? This might be the one circumstance that it may be beneficial to include possible working fire on the attached garage, Bravo Charlie corner of the residence. Right? That paints that picture. I've got an attached garage, Bravo Charlie side, possible working fire on that location. I include possible because I don't know really. It's not giving me enough clues to really telling me that this is, it's a working fire, but possibly it's that, or possibly it's something else. So a 360 would be important. Yeah, it could, I mean, honestly, it could be a lawnmower in the back. It could be a turkey fryer. It could be, it's definitely not a smoker, unless that took off a little bit on you. But a lot of things that it still could be. But that's my job, is just to give that initial assessment and size up that I can tell that snapshot from that front yard. That's all you got to do. So many people worry about, oh, it really might not be the house. Maybe I won't say that. Just I got fired. There's other times where it's very apparent that it does not seem like it's the house that's on fire. It's kind of hard to tell in a 2D snapshot picture, right? You're on scene, seeing that column of smoke further back than the house is. Would that be a different size up? Yeah, I would still say I'm arriving on a small 2-story single family residence. I believe I possibly have a fire in the backyard of the residence. We'll be completing a 360 checking.
I was thinking about that.
And that's only if, this one, I think that column of smoke looks like it's layered in close enough. You do have possible involvement. I don't think there's anything wrong saying that I've got a fire on that Bravo Charlie corner. I would say it just depends on what you see in.
It probably depends on which way you came in.
Yeah.
If you came in from the right, you're not gonna see it, but if you came from the left, you might be able to. at least
Absolutely.
Maybe take a quick picture.
Absolutely.
And I think our 360 will tell us a lot too. They'll be able to update, say, hey, no, we've got a shed that's involved. No impediment to the house, destruction.
And that's again, 360 is the most important thing, because if I worked off of continued assumptions without verifying them, you would potentially have people making entry right here and trying to get into the garage when really you just have a shed fire in the backyard. 360s are imperative that we complete. And I did like your assignment, Tower 3, lay a line, front yard, wait for 360 to be complete. I mean, basically, that's just saying, my most important thing for us to do right now is, based on everything I'm seeing, is put the fire out. Right, so let's lay a line, get it ready, but I'm gonna tell you where it needs to be because I'm still not sure yet. So I think that's the right move to make. That's right, it's not a goal.
Oh, if I could be, put me so nervous when I say it.
Oh, it takes practice, and I say that in the best possible way because it takes time to learn all these things. Let me see here. Who wants this one? We got plenty of them. We can all do them today. I heard someone say, all right.
No, I was just like.
Oh.
They want me to-
I thought somebody was like, all right, I'm ready. I'm like,
You
okay.
want me, I'll just keep practicing it.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'll do this one.
Go for it.
Dispatch from, Centennial, Engine 3.
Go ahead.
We're arriving to a 2-story, single-family home. I have working fire showing from the Alpha side. I will be offensive. I will be doing a 360 update to follow. I'll have Centennial Engine 3 will have Main Street Command. Update 360 after follow up.
So,
What do we call this, a 2-story?
great question.
Oh,
I would consider this a split entry. And I say split entry because I would have a foyer right here who I walk into, and I'm gonna have a choice to go up a half flight or down a half flight. So that's a split entry to me. And that's gonna start telling me that I need to start labeling things as lower level and upper level. Likely in a layout like this, I'm not gonna have a sub basement, but you still might come across one. So lower level and upper level, all right? And that's why, again, it's having that split entry, split level, whatever terminology you need to use on that, just to differentiate, to get people to understand that is gonna be important. Another nice thing to hear about split level or split entry. What type of windows do we have right here for that lower level?
Look out.
Look out, so I've got pretty good access, because these aren't rambling windows. It's a split entry or split level, but I'm gonna have those bigger windows, which provides me better egress and in entrance if I need to. So Engine 3 arrived on scene. I've got a small split entry, single family residence. I've got a working fire on the Alpha side, upper level. We agree that that sounds right? Okay. We're pretty confident this is just a room and contents?
Based on smoke.
Based on my initial snapshot of this, I got light smoke from the front door, we're showing fire from right here with a good column of smoke. No other smoke showing from the rest of the house. Pretty good indication that it's just a good working fire in that room right there. Step further, what room is that? Living room, right?
could be.
Could be, great. 99% of the time it's going to be. Doesn't mean it is every time, no. Each one's different, but at the same time, it's important that we create these assumptions and then get them verified. I believe I'm sending you to the living room. Now, that doesn't need to come across on a size up or anything else, but you need to have that thought process as an incident commander. I know where I'm sending you, because if that's a bedroom versus a living room versus a kitchen, it changes your mindset for what they're going to be coming across and what you're sending them into, right? So
I suppose to some people, a 2-story would be different than a. So if you kind of know it, you should probably call it out what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Picture before when we didn't.
Yep, when you weren't
didn't know
sure.
if it was or not, so.
Yep. And will you get it wrong on a size up? Absolutely. I've done it where I'm like, I see a certain thing and I say it that way. And the more I look at it, I'm like, shit, that's not a 2-story, that's a split. Where do you catch that? On your 360 update, right? You can still catch it, you can fix it. It's important to get the most current and correct information out as early as possible, but it's also more important that we evaluate and ensure that we get the right stuff out eventually. So we got a working fire right there. Do we believe this would be an appropriate one for a quick hit? I think this is beautiful. I've got my front door right here. I can do a quick hit right there and I can make entry. Is there anything wrong with engine 3? I need you to complete a quick hit, prepare for entry while I complete a 360. 100%. If I do a quick hit right now, is that going to affect anything but make this a better situation while you complete that 360? It's only going to improve things for you. Now that's if we're doing 360s properly and not doing, pushing and creating thermal disruptions and all those other things. As long as you do a quick hit properly, you're going to make this environment way better. And then you're going to be able to make entry after that 360 has been complete and you verified, yep, I had a working fire there. I don't see it anywhere else. I still believe that's a living room. I don't see any hazards. Let's go ahead and make entry. All right. It's not a PowerPoint. It's not a PowerPoint. I'll learn it eventually. All right.
Is that right next to Station Park?
That one
Or is that the apartments?
is not.
Oh, okay.
That one's off of 78th Avenue. That's in Spring Lake Park.
Okay.
But it does look like those,
It looks- yeah,
right off of Lever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like those. Centennial Plaza. So you're called to a structure fire here. You arrive on scene and you see this. Nothing showing. So that, we've already got our description of the problem, right? Nothing showing. Once size it up, we already gave you the problem. Go for it.
Dispatch Centennial Engine 3.
Go ahead.
Arriving on scene to a two-story, I guess it's an apartment, two-story multifamily resident, nothing showing, go investigating, have command 360 to follow. So you're not going to do anything else beyond that. You don't see the smoke, nothing.
Now, my orders to my crew might be grab a tick and water can and a Halligan and prepare for entry on the alpha side. But I'm not sending them in until I've completed the 360 or established what's going on. So something that we want to be mindful of. The problem that I have is going to bleed into the assignments that I give. When I see nothing, I'm investigating. All right. If I have a working fire, are you still investigating? You're doing a 360, you're doing other things, but your crew is working. Your investigation is moved to a 360. Investigating is when I don't really know what I have here. I don't think I have a problem. I need to investigate this further. So could you have an investigation on maybe a light smoke showing? Possibly, depending on how light it is. Obviously, if you got good smoke coming out of the front, I'm not going to be investigating that. We're going to be taking action on that. Investigation is reserved for somebody that's just going to walk around and be like, oh, I wonder what's going on in here. Right? That's, I always think about it that way. If I have a good working fire and I say I'm going to be investigating, as a chief, when I'm driving there, I just assume you're going, oh, I don't really know what to do. All right, let's just go ahead and look at this. So give the assignment that's appropriate to match the action that you're needing to accomplish.
So in this situation, so your crew, they don't have any pertinent tasks right now. Could you tag one with you to maybe 360 from the other side, do it together, or they can knock and go inside while you do your 360?
100%. I mean, is there anything wrong in a situation like this? Engine 3, I need you to go ahead, grab tick, water can, thermal imaging. I need you to go to the alpha door and just check conditions from alpha side. Well, I completed 360. Anybody see anything wrong with that? I've not overcommitted them. I've not to the sense where I've established them going in without gathering enough information. I'm just asking them to see the conditions on the interior match what I'm seeing on the exterior, because I just need to continue that walk around. I haven't said grab a line and go make fire control. There's nothing to control.
Would you point out that this is a split level?
So that's a great point. And that's why I like to use this one. And I like that you kind of like, I don't know, is this
So I see
apartment
four
or is it-
mailboxes,
Yep.
so I'm like, there must be four separate
So-
living spaces.
So, yeah, so this one's actually a quad, like a fourplex. So you walk in and then you have a unit down, unit up, unit up. So generally what you have is you walk in, it's just kind of that foyer, and then you just have those multiple splits that go up. So could you call it a split level? Could you call it a 2-story? This is one of those, it gets kind of tough on the quad homes where a single family residence split level is very, we all know what that looks like, right? On a split level quad, you're like, does that mean? So I think you use the terminology multifamily. It's a multifamily, right? Now, once I've completed my 360, maybe I gather a little bit more information. Like you said, maybe it's starting to register me. Oh, there's 4 mailboxes here. Is there anything wrong on a 360 coming back and identifying this building as a quadplex, fourplex home, you know, whatever that might be? Is there anything wrong with adding that in at that point? No. I've given you my initial snapshot, and then I've continued to build in a better picture for everyone as I continue to go along.
If I heard split level on that, that's not what I would picture though.
And that I would tend to agree with you on that one. And that's why I would probably call this one just a 2-story fourplex.
So at this
And even
point,
fourplex is those are so different, can't they? It could be 2 houses front and back. This one's 2 up on top of each other and side by side. But I think that hits it a little bit better than an apartment, because I think if I heard that was in an apartment, I'd be like, huh, well, I mean, I guess technically, I mean, it's one of those that this one's kind of those in-between ones that you're gonna have to make a judgment call and describe it as best as you can. It's gonna come with practicing, and it's gonna come with talking with others. What do you guys understand as I describe this? Does that match your same bubble that I'm describing, right?
If that, I don't know if we're assuming that that was a fire call, an all call or whatever, after you complete your 360, could you go ahead and say, you know, at this point, everyone can slow it to routine or?
Absolutely. So that's another great point. So I've got nothing showing. My next point is saying that I'm investigating. I continue to investigate. Am I slowing anybody at this point?
no, you're missing.
Depends. I would probably not until I know a little bit more. Somebody said that there was an emergency. What was the call that was called in? Did somebody call in and say, I've got fire through the roof? Am I at the right location? Did they call it in and it was really 2 houses down? Did we get something wrong? Or did somebody call in and say that they thought their oven was on fire? And I get on scene and I see this. It might slow. I might not cancel everyone, but I might slow everyone. And then once I've truly figured out what I have, that's when I would determine, do I have enough resources currently? Do I need 1 more truck? Do I not need anybody? And that's what you can kind of go through that progression. Don't cut too soon. Cut appropriate as you're able to feel comfortable. Because again, it always goes back to that authority and responsibility. You have the authority to request more, shut everyone down, whatever you want to do, but you're also responsible for that decision.
I've never heard you guys routine anybody until it's confirmed, like on a bird food or something, you know, like confirmed bird food, so everybody to routine, or you'll keep engine 1 coming or whatever, you know, and cancel everybody else.
Generally, until a chief gets on scene, even if I do a size up, I've got nothing showing, completing a 360, checking interior, whatever that chief is going to be saying, until that they've made contact or gone into that interior to verify that I don't have a problem here, that's generally when it's there. I'll take 1 truck routine, cancel everyone else, whatever that decision-making process is going to be. So I would say be on the safe side. You were called to an emergency. Use your understanding of what that emergency was. Does that match what you're given? Do you have the resources needed if there really is an emergency? You don't want to be the person that sends everyone home to realize that there really was a fire inside of one of these units.
Everybody else.
Exactly. Yep. Now, seeing this, would you still have potential to come inside of a fire in one of those units?
Could be in the back, Travis.
You could have, maybe there is something burning that you're not able to see. Maybe one of those units had a fire that's already kind of extinguished itself and it's already gone back to that, you know, end phase of the fire cycle, and it's just kind of hazy smoke inside. You could walk into this entryway and just smell it immediately. You might even smell it from the curb line and go, something's not right. We've had this exact look on some houses where maybe it was toned out as, I believe I've got a fire in my house. I smell smoke and I have a light haze. When you get on scene and you see this, you're like, well, there's really not anything. I'm not going to cancel everyone. What it generally is you could have a bath fan that burnt up and it's just kind of smoldering and burning in the attic. Those can very quickly take off on those great conditions if, you know, we start opening up different spaces and it starts going. So until you know what you have, be cautious just to cut everyone, kind of make sure that you're matching the situation with what to expect and what it could turn into. I'm not going to try to click an advanced focus. I don't like that one. I think it's deceiving. It is a further step back than most, but it's not. I think most of these were taken with a Google Street View. So it kind of has that weird
that
bubble
weird
camera that kind of just makes it all look. look further back than it is. So this is at Valentine Lane. Valentine. This is Spring Lake Park. Who wants a crack at this one?
Dispatch from engine 11.
Go ahead.
And engine 11 running through a single family residence with heavy fire coming out of the alpha side garage area. We'll be out laying on the line doing the defensive attack. Engine 11 has Valentine commanding 360 to follow.
You gave a pretty short, quick picture, right? Did that paint everything? Split level, attached garage. I like having an attached garage on that. And again, sometimes the picture's hard to tell. I'm not gonna hold it completely against you, but an attached garage with extension to the residence, right? Where's that extension at? Into the attic, right? And you can start to tell that it's in there. So I've got that, and then it's really kind of hard to tell. I apologize, the picture's kind of rough, but you've got other smoke pushing out on the other side of the attic as well. So I've got involvement in that attic, or at least extension into it. So initial orders are defensive. Would be, is this defensive? Fully defensive? We might be defensive here,
And then do it off.
offensive here. So you can be multiple modes or strategies at the same time, right? But you have to be very clear about that. We are defensive on the garage and offensive on the residence. That means I'm not putting anybody inside of that garage. I believe I have a good barrier or break on that residence, that this is a safe environment. This is not. Crews can work in here. They can't work in there. All right. I'm making that determination as command. I can have crews get in here, access that attic space and start to extinguish. Is that going to be my first crew going in right now?
No.
No. My first crew is probably going to be sitting right here, hitting this and then working its way back to that, right? So that's fire control from the exterior would be my primary objective on this one. So I think that's absolutely the right move to make. My secondary crew, I can tell you where I'm having to go. Make entry with the line and start getting into that attic space, right? But it's important if we say, this one's tough. I believe that this is a single family. This is a single family residence, but it's got, no, it is a split. I can't tell.
I would say it's a split.
I think you might be right. I think it is a split. Yep, no, it's a split because your door height and your window height. Yep, so it's a split. And this is important where I need that second crew to that makes entry to go to the upper level and work on extension of the attic space, right? Start pulling ceiling, get fire control in that attic space, check for extension. Clear? Let's do. You know what, let's save the rest because I didn't realize it was already 7:30. All right. I will make sure that I send more of these out to you guys as well. So you guys will have not just these to practice on, but then also maybe some descriptions on how we would say it. Absolutely feel free to give us a response. I don't necessarily agree with this or why would it be this way? We can work through that, but I think it'll be helpful if you see an example of how we would say it and then also allowing yourself to practice it. So we'll send those out to you. Okay, so 360 report. The 360, and I put this sim up here for a reason on a 360. This one almost killed firefighters for us, or at least very closely injured them. This was probably about 12 years ago. Polk Street Apartments, or Cloverleaf Apartments, right off of Polk and Cloverleaf. I don't remember the name of it.
I think I heard about this.
Yep, so we were called out. This was middle of the night. It's kind of hard to tell. Do you see different fire conditions at night versus during the day? Absolutely, right? Got on scene, came around, and the way that they came up this way and pulled in right here. All right, the first riding chief pulled into the lot. Was given reports of, I don't remember how it was dispatched, but there was a lot of assumptions made that this was just burnt food. All right, so a lot of the assumptions that incident command had when they got there and sized this up was I got burnt food. I don't have any indications that I've got anything beyond that. We had trucks lined up along this street right here, staring at fire coming out of these windows. And they didn't say anything to command. 360s were never given, never completed. And we never gave them the information needed. Yes.
Sorry.
You're
On a
fine.
building of that size, are you truly gonna do a 360?
No, probably not.
Try to get you a-
I can tell you, I'm not gonna walk it, but I can tell you at the very,
180?
at the very least, you know, I might take extra time in my vehicle to, before I pull in there, I might pull up there and then pull back.
Okay.
I also might have my command post set up right there, but I can at the very least walk over here and then walk back. So that's a great point, because on some of these mega structures, you know, are you gonna be able to walk that whole thing? Some you're gonna be able to drive. Target, Kohl's, a lot of those buildings you can drive all the way around. So if you're in a, excuse me, if you're a chief, very easy to do that. Are you gonna do that in your engine? Because you're trying to get them off and lane lines? Probably not.
Well, you might, because they might be closer to an entrance.
You might be trying to gain a better entrance. So just even in your positioning of that first truck, you might see 2 or 3 sides of the building, right? You might not do a complete one, but you might be trying to, like you said, gain your best access. On this situation, again, like I said, they came up this way, came in the driveway, which is really the only way to get into this building, and they didn't see anything on this backside. And they never got out to investigate any of the backside. You're not always going to get it. You're not always going to walk around everything, but you can at least make an attempt to get around and at least get a good glimpse as to what you got going on, right?
Question, were the fire alarms going off on this?
Mhm.
Okay.
And
They go off for burn.
they'll go off for anything.
But
So,
I'm talking like the whole entire, the whole system, you know?
Yep.
like-
yep. So it's not a sprinkled
It
building.
looks old. That's
How
what's
many
in
units
there.
is
It's not,
that?
what's that?
How many units was that right there?
This was one big suite.
This one big suite.
Yep, so this, I believe this was a bedroom, and then like, I think this was like the living room area, I believe. It's been a while since I've been in there, it was 12 years ago. But I kind of go back to, there was failures on multiple parts, and that kind of what we address as an organization is, crews did not give good CAN reports back to incident command. Incident command never had a 360. Staged units seeing pertinent things that were not matching the actions that were being taken, never gave information to command that they were seeing things from the Charlie side that they were not seeing on the Alpha.
So there was no Charlie division?
There was no Charlie division. No, because it was never thought that was needed. We thought there was burnt food and they were just further investigating. What do you got going on? We've got smoke up here. What they weren't saying is that we're crawling on our bellies because it's so hot.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously, if you're not giving the good CAN report for that interior condition, incident command in the middle of the night with the type of fire that this was and the little amount of smoke that was coming out had no idea. No idea. So a 360 is designed to properly evaluate what your initial size up was, what your actions were, and to save lives, not just of the property, but our own people. Because what we initially think it is can look completely different from the backside.
What was the radio traffic like that night?
It was fairly light. It was 12 years ago, so I don't think there was too much where it was overcomplicated or, you know, too many people getting on there or not able to get on. I think it was, it's hard to remember, but I do believe that there was more than enough opportunity for people to get on if they wanted to. It was just more of that mindset of, well, they must understand. There was so many assumptions that went into it. And again, that's why I say it's important as incident command to get on scene and say, I am completing the 360, because if they don't hear it, it hasn't been done. A 360 has been completed. So once I hear that, I know it's been done. So if I'm sitting in staging and I haven't heard those things, hey, command from engine 3, yeah, go ahead. You got fire on the Charlie side on the 3rd floor. Are you aware of that? You know, just that little bit. If I would have known as a staging unit back there, those things have not been done. I've not heard them over the radio, so I can not verify that they see the same things that I'm seeing. Right? So that's really what we're trying to do. Now, who do we need to give the 360 report to? And I guess maybe more generically, what radio channel do we do it on? We've been assigned FTAC-A. So we're doing it on that tactical channel. I got on scene, I did my size up on county, I switched everything over to FTAC-A. FTAC-A is now my channel that I've used ever since size up. Dispatch from command. Go ahead. Be advised 360 is complete, and I'm gonna give you the information. All right, so it kind of goes back out, because by giving it to command or giving it to dispatch, they're logging it, they're tracking it, and everyone else on that scene has also gotten that information. So it keeps it consistent in that mindset.
Well, if you're first on scene
Mhm.
and trucks are en route and you don't switch to tech until you arrive, they're not getting that information.
Exactly, I've seen that happen.
And what is supposed to be happening is supposed to be having a portable on FTAC-A and your mobile on county. That's what's supposed to happen. Doesn't always, does it? There's been talk on, the incident was FTAC A, then should everything go on FTAC A, right? And there was also talk about, well, if everything goes on FTAC A, then we have units arriving on scene while tactical objectives are being completed. So again, I've got engine 1 saying, I'm arriving on scene, staging at the hydrant, where I've also got tower 3 inside trying to say, I've got fire and I need, so there hasn't been a great solution to that yet. More to come. Yeah, and that's what I would say. And I don't necessarily love the situation that we find ourselves in. I think there's some improvements that we can continue to make. But as we sit now, that's kind of how it is. And that's why it's important that you're monitoring both channels.
For instance, that happened just a couple weeks ago on Power 3. I had a portable radio on, because that's the first thing I do when we go on disposal structure fire, if it is, or whatever. I always grab one, put it on FTAC A. That's how it should be on FTAC A when you turn it on.
Yep. Yep,
But-
and that's, I found most of those radios are either on City TAC or FTAC A.
Yeah, but no, everybody's like, how are you hearing this information? I'm like, dude, I'm on FTAC A.
Yeah.
And they're like,
If you don't have good radio
so
discipline.
I heard
you're
they're
not-
gonna
you're
cancel
miss that.
everybody. I'm like, hey, they're gonna be canceling everybody, so, you know, because you couldn't hear it over the radio.
And that's just it. If you're not using good radio discipline, it's not gonna be beneficial to anybody. So more improvements to come is the best I can say on that.
Yeah.
They'll continue to modify as we go through that.
So 360 information on FTAC.
Yep, so
Right on
basically the
scene.
way that we've been doing it is you're going en route on county, you arrive on county, everything after the arrival is on FTAC A.
So you arrive on scene, single family, blah, 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 360 call switching. FTAC.
Yep. Yep. That's where the report goes to. And what are we trying to identify? What is really the core content of that 360?
Their action.
That I've gotten a full picture of this incident, right? And again, I want to remind you guys, it's not always just about finding fire locations or finding potential patients. Read the building. Understand, like we said, are there units on the backside? Is there sliding doors on the backside? Is there access points that I can now utilize? So I arrived to this. I give a size up of this. My 360 is now going to tell me on the Bravo side, I can see that. On the Charlie, this is my view. And on the Delta, that is my view. I'm going through and I'm not looking just for fire location. I'm using this as an opportunity to confirm that my suspected and initially assessed fire location is correct. All right. I'm also going to assess, is there any possible patients? Did I get to the backside? Are there any hazards that I have not seen from the Alpha side that are going to affect the scene? And then lastly, how does this building lay out? How do I access? If I put people on the inside, how can they get out? Where am I going to send them if I need to get them to do utilities? Can I find a stairwell? Looking at all sides of this building right now, can anybody tell me where do you think you're going to find the stairs to access the basement?
Right through that side door right there.
Right?
Yep.
And again, is that a guarantee? No, but it's a pretty darn good bet, right? We all have seen Ramblers. We all know what they look like. And if I've got this side entrance right in the side of the house, it's going to shoot straight down, right?
Through the kitchen.
Yep, yeah, and you can already tell, I got a kitchen here, I got a living room here, and I can tell because I got that big window right there, so that's the living room, a little bit smaller window right there, bathroom, bedroom, you're going through and you've seen this house without seeing, all right? But let your 360 confirm that, because there's remodels, there's changes that could happen all the time, and this building's gonna want to tell you a little bit about it, more so than just running around to make sure that, is there fire anywhere else? I think that's what a lot of people think the 360 is just, oh, do I have a fire? Nope. Do I need to attack? No. All right, good. Get up. What kind of basement do I have? Look out basement.
Peek out.
Peek out, peek out. So again, when we say peek out, that just means you got more of those like Rambler style, small windows. A lookout, you could have windows this tall to this tall. A peek out, it's really only going to be this. Other people have called it a Rambler style basement. Everyone understand a Rambler style basement? Again, clear, common terminology, whatever we need to use to ensure that that basement style is understood. I have very poor access. Can I get a firefighter through there?
You could, but it'd be-
It's going to be tough. We've practiced it and it's tough. Even a little one. Yeah, there's certain ones that you go back to knowing my crew. I can get that person through there if I had to. Yep. So with my initial size up, stating that I've got a working fire, room and contents on the Bravo Alpha corner in the basement, and then my 360 stating that I've got a Rambler style basement. What are we thinking? Well, I'd like to knock that down first, right? Before I make entry. I've got access to the stairs right here. My crew's gonna make entry right here, right? I've got a horrible situation. I have to send crews down into the fire. And in a situation where I have very limited, if any, egress outside of that residence, right? So I've kind of got a tough situation, so I want to knock it down as best I can, but I know the best access. I know what I'm getting into. I'm going to back that crew up and ensure that I'm getting them the safest approach as possible, right? So just by getting that 360 and ensuring that what I saw originally is going to be supported with my next continuing actions, you're going to make it as safe as you possibly can, right? What I was hoping to see as I come around on this backside, what am I hoping to see? A walk up or a walk up, even if it was a walk up, which you're gonna have more of that stairwell that would go down. Oh, that'd be great. I'd love that. I wasn't blessed today with that. We're gonna have to go down the stairwell.
See a lot of smoke in the other windows. Though, so it might not be that big.
It's likely probably, and that's a great part as well, because you're not just looking to say, what's going on in there. I like to look into the windows, not just to see if I can see fire in them, but if I can see through the window, I don't have any smoke in there, it means it's not extended beyond that room. It means the door is probably shut. It's probably localized to that one room. Doing a quick hit on that and then making entry, probably pretty safe. Now, if I looked through and I had smoke throughout and I couldn't see through any of the windows, it's gonna be a little bit tougher, but I don't have extension up to that upper level, so it's probably localized still just onto that basement area. So again, 360, it's gonna tell you a lot. So big things that we want to identify, basement type, because again, for us, we have a lot of basements. The basement type is going to tell us, what I found more often than not, if I do not know where the fire is on my initial size up, I've got smoke showing, but I couldn't really tell you where exactly this fire is. 85% of the time it's in the basement. Just generally what I found. I get on scene, there's just smoke kind of coming out everywhere. And it's probably in the basement. It just kind of seems to be the way that it is. So that's why finding that basement type and how we're going to access it is going to be very important. I'm looking to see if the change in the fire location or conditions happens at all. I'm identifying hazards. If I go back, anybody tell me what hazards I have on this building from the 360 that I might not have seen on the initial?
Natural gas.
Natural, so you got your gas meter right over here?
You got your electrical plug in.
Yeah. Get your electrical, you got wires running on the Charlie Bravo corner, right? Now, might not seem important to say that on a 360, but it's a pretty easy thing to throw out there, especially as later on, if we have to ladder this roof, work up there at all. What if we have to locate utilities? I have to send a crew in to go shut the power off. Where do you think the power is?
Basement or in the garage.
Yeah, basement in that corner right there. That's telling you where to send a crew. It's right down there. So again, utilize all those different components. Identify those hazards, what's going on. And you always end it with confirm the strategy and then finish deploying the crew. And I say finish deploying the crew because as that first arriving company officer on that engine, I probably didn't commit them to the interior, right? I had them flake hose out on the alpha side, did whatever else. Exterior work, prepping for my 360 to be complete. Your 360 is now complete. You now have that authority if you have the right resources in place and are able to make a difference to now send them inside if you needed to, right? Because again, we said if we got 2 in, 2 out, we're good to go. Situational warranted. Staffing and resources. Look beyond the building or look beyond the fire, or learn the building. So what kind of basement types do we have? Up here. Slab on grade, right? How about over here? Lookout. Yep, and they kind of get used interchangeably. Some people call this a lookout as well, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but peek out kind of tells you that I gotta stand up on my tiptoes to peek out that window. What's this? Walk up. Walk out. Could I have a grade slope like this? Would this still be a walkout or would this be a walkout? Still be a walkout. And I know that sounds a little bit more confusing, but generally a walk up is where they just kind of just trench in that one little spot for a stairwell to kind of get to the basement. You can have some grades right here that kind of slope their way down. And that would still be a walk out because I'm easily able to walk out onto that.
So is that really a walkout? I mean, the windows are at the grade.
This one right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this one, and I wish I had better pictures. I apologize. So this is actually a door right here. And then this is actually a sliding door. And then that one is just a really tall window, which kind of throws it all off, doesn't it? Because you kind of look at that and you're like, wait a minute, am I looking at a lookout or a walkout? And in real life, I think you're gonna have a little bit easier time telling those things. So when I give my 360 report back to dispatch, I'm gonna say if anything's changed to the fire location, any immediate tactical changes that I'm gonna have, has the fire condition changed? So on a fire like this, I arrive on scene, right away I'm drawn to this right here, right? I think you got a fire in the garage. Well, what else am I seeing up here? Extension up in that attic, eaves. Is there potential that that whole backside of this house is on fire? Absolutely. So if I got on scene and did my initial size up, possible garage fire with extension to the attic, could it change if I go on that backside and the whole backside's on fire? You got a whole exterior fire. So again, your initial size up, don't ever hold back on what you see. Just say what you see. Don't take too much assumptions or look too far into it. Say what you see, get that 360 in, and that'll allow you to change that or update that to what you're actually seeing as you get that full picture. So what are some of the other hazards that we can locate? And a lot of them are going to show themselves probably on the Charlie side more often than not. Pool. Why is a pool a hazard?
You don't want people falling in.
Right? So is there anything, we go in the middle of the night and somebody has to ladder and go up to right there. I don't know that that's there, and I'm walking with my crew with a ladder. That becomes a pretty big hazard, doesn't it?
Especially if there's a cover on the pool.
Especially if there's a cover. Let's say there's snow, small layer of snow over the top. You might, middle of the night, you might not even be able to tell that there's a pool back there. But as an incident command, when I complete my 360, I expect that you're looking beyond the fire and trying to assess that situation. You're sending your crews back there. Is it a safe place for them to work?
We were on fire in the city south of ours, and that whole backyard was foam.
Oh,
It was foam.
okay. Yep.
And they were doing yard work too, so there was spots where it would drop a foot.
Sure, and you had no idea because you couldn't see it, right? And I think it's important to identify that as a hazard as well, as crews be advised, if you're gonna be working in an environment with foam, uneven ground that you're working on. So this is one of those things I always think it's funny because people always look for the pool and, you know, does a pool matter all that much? It does matter.
Ingrown drop train.
Yep. Basically, I can draft right out of that. We're good to go, right? But not necessarily always going to be an in-ground like this. You might have some of those slightly raised, you might have fencing decks that go around that are going to limit your access now. And I've seen some that had a pool right here and, you know, they do add-ons and decks and fences, and now I have limited access to actually get in there. So it might protect me from falling in, but now I'm going to have limited access to actually operate on that side again if I had to throw a ladder or do whatever else. So be mindful of that. Anytime that we would have a giant propane tank, would that be possibly a hazard that we would want to come across? Maybe identify crews, just let them know, hey, this is a big deal. Power lines. Anytime that you got power lines, and especially if they're being impinged upon, or there's a possible extension or exposure to them, right? Because I've been on scenes where the lines come down and they're still live. If crews do not know about it, that is a dangerous environment to work in, right? You've got live, potentially live. We have to treat them all as if they're live. I'm not going to tell it like the power line whisperer and be able to tell you, no, those are dead. We're good. We can work around these, you know. But there's certain people that think, no, they're down from this side, not that. Yeah, you don't know. All right. We have to assume that they're live until we're able to verify. Okay. And you have to kind of create those clear cordons around them. And especially if you've got flames working on this right here, maybe coming out. What if I had a fire working down here, flames are coming up right here, and I've got a crew sitting right here underneath them now, trying to attack this fire. You're sitting right underneath them. Again, identify that, hey, I've got lines on the Bravo Charlie corner of the structure. Just easy thing to throw out there on a 360, but it can really start to paint that picture for crews as they're coming in. Don't forget, you know the most about this building than anybody else. Your crew that you are with is still out in the front yard, likely pulling a line out, right? They have no idea what you've seen on the backside. You got to paint that picture as good as you can without being wordy. And that's the toughest thing, because some of us want to just start talking because I see this and it's a blue car and it's in the way and it's going to, we have to, if there's obstructions, just state there are obstructions to efforts on the Charlie side. We're not going to be able to access the Charlie side. It doesn't need to say, I've got 3 different fences and they're all of varying heights and it's gonna be, you know, it's just there's obstructions on the Charlie side. It's not gonna allow us to operate on that location. Whatever we need to do to get that across tactically for people to understand, that location is gonna be difficult or a potential hazard. So we confirm that strategy. Am I staying offensive? Am I switching to defensive? Do I want to redeploy? Do I want to go somewhere else? I had you maybe flaking a line out on the Alpha side, but really be more beneficial if we move to the Charlie side, knock this down, and then work our way back to the Alpha side.
And also.
Yeah, I think you've seen that one once or twice. And then what else have I learned about this house? Walking around this house, can anybody tell me where is the stairwell on this house?
They're well forward to go up.
Yep, if I had to send a
Right by
crew
the-
in,
Right by the living room, right as you walk in, right by, in between the kitchen and living room right there. Should be-
stairwell is right here. How do you know?
yeah. Well, that's, but when you. come
You've
in-
got a window
Oh,
that is a different level than the rest of the windows on the whole house.
So that's a landing.
That's a landing, exactly. So use the keys that building is telling you to say, oh, hey. And it's a funny thing, I was doing testing for St. Paul and one of their captains I was going through pointed that out. I've got a landing over here. It's just like, oh, and then you start looking at all the houses. I'm like, that is where the stairs are. Almost every single time when you look at these houses, you drive by, you're like, there's a drop down for a window right there. Now, not every house is going to have that, but if the house is going to have it, you know, they didn't put a living room right here. It's not a split level. That's a landing. It's a straight 2-story with a landing right there. So I know if I go through this front door right here, I'm gonna go past this room and the stairs are gonna be right there. So again, gain that knowledge, because especially if I come back, I completed that 360. I might not say it over the radio, but this is information that I know, because again, nobody else knows this. And one of those flaking lines out here. I got fire up here. Engine 1, I need you to make entry to the 2nd floor. If you go straight in and to the left, you should have stairs on your left-hand side. Versus engine 1, I'm just gonna go in and do a right-hand search. I think that maybe the stairs are gonna be back around the backside because they don't know any better. They haven't seen this. They're hoping that it's gonna be right in front of them. Give them that information. What else do we see here, right? We know where utilities are gonna be located, right? So utilities are gonna be down in the basement. What type of a basement? It's hard to tell. Lookout basement. So lookout style of a basement. So easier to tell in real life than it is on pictures. You got this up here. What does that allow me to know? Now, I'm not saying that I necessarily need to be on the 360, but as an incident commander, does seeing a deck on the back that with stairs mean anything to me? It's egress. If I've got a crew that calls a mayday on that Charlie side, 1st floor, you've got egress to a deck on that Charlie side. Work your way to that, or I can deploy a RIT team through that. Again, you know more about this building than anybody else. Use it to your advantage. What's up on the roof? Solar panels. Might be worth mentioning, right? Again, I'm not saying it's a huge hazard in the sense that there's solar panels, but if somebody goes to shut the power off and it's the middle of the day, you are still going to have power from here coming down there to your meter, right? If you have fire involving this area right here, you still have potential for that electrical hazard. If people are overhauling in that area, right?
Is there another way to shut off panels?
Cover them with tarps, what the best you can do. And
There
that's
should be a
a lot
shut-off
to
there.
cover.
There should be a shut.
So there's a shut off right here, but all that's gonna do is shut power off from this point down to here. As long as those solar panels are getting light, they will have power that brings it down to that point right there. They'll never be able to shut that off. So if you have to cut through the roof or do anything else in the middle of the day, you've got electrical hazards to worry about. So that's why it is important to bring that up, because it could affect later operations and later understandings. If somebody has to go to the roof, you're gonna have limited access on that Charlie side, right? So, and that is something that is getting more and more and more common, right? That's something I never thought we would see in this state, and it has become more common than I thought it would, and it's continuing to grow.
Real questions. Are you saving money on your electric bill?
Yep.
Yeah, you're still.
Yeah, yeah, I
One day.
gotta wait a few years, but we'll get there. All right, so we'll do a couple of these. I know we're starting to get to the end of the night here. But I do want you guys to have a chance to run through this. All right. Oh, come Okay, so I got it.
There we go. Now
All
I
right.
see something.
No, good. All right. So who wants to do initial size up? Your Centennial Engine 11. This is Lund Street, your first box alarm assignment. You got a crew of 4. So go ahead and practice
Is this what you call sim?
roughly. Basic version as we can. Go for it.
Dispatch Centennial Engine 11,
Go ahead.
Centennial 11, Engine 11, arriving to single story, small, single family residence. Flame showing from Alpha Bravo corner. Centennial Engine 11 will be a command. Laying out a line to the Alpha side. And be working command 360 to 360 to follow. Be in command at Lund Street.
One string command. What strategy you picking?
One attack A.
Attack A.
And then it would be a transitional attack.
Sound good? Arriving small, single story, single family residence. I've got a working fire, Alpha Bravo corner, first floor. Laying a line to Alpha side, completing a 360. Assuming Lund Street command will be in a transitional attack. Okay, and that's pretty much the gist of what we're trying to say here. Okay. So your crew, from my understanding, they're gonna go ahead and start getting a line out here. You've stated to them this is a transitional attack. They've been given the green light to go ahead and spray water on that while you complete your 360. We're all in agreement with that decision-making process? I agree with that as well. So which way do you want to go, left or right? Let's go left. Well, it's the flame, we can't avoid it. And that fire's on that side. I don't need to go that side, right? What's the side telling me? I got another option for a door, right? And again, we already talked about this. More than likely, I've got that rambler, so I've got that stairwell that sits right there.
Nothing else showing, nothing through the windows.
Nothing's showing through, you're seeing through the windows, right? You're seeing into the structure, so you can tell that I don't really have any products back in that area, right? What do we see on this side? Electrical mass?
Another egress.
Another egress? Fence right there, yeah. This side? Any changes? You got gas meter kind of hiding right there. Okay, 360 is complete. How are you going to give that update to command? Or, I'm sorry, to dispatch? Let's go ahead and tell me.
Dispatch Lund Street command.
Go ahead.
On 360, nothing else showing from Bravo side, Charlie or Delta. Egress on Bravo side and Charlie side appears to just be room and contents fire in the Alpha Bravo corner. So doing an exterior attack. Next arriving engine, prepare to make entry through Alpha door.
Good. I mean, you got the right content. Now, how do we practice that to even be streamlined? You know, and it's, you're saying the right things. It's how we can be streamlined. Dispatch from Lund Street Command. Go ahead. 360 complete. No changes to fire condition. I do have a lookout basement. We've been maintaining the transitional attack.
So you would keep those egress points information in your brain for.
Unless it mattered to the crews coming in, because I'm going to deploy somebody over there or whatever. Unless it mattered, that's just kind of for my own knowledge. So
For you.
I apologize a little bit because I kind of threw a lot of information at you guys. Know where the electrical is, know where this is, look through these windows, know all this stuff. It doesn't all need to be on that 360 report. I need to be able to confirm the fire conditions. I need to be able to confirm that basement type. I need to be able to confirm any hazards. And I need to be able to reconfirm the strategy that we're going to be staying in. Right? That's really what people need to know, is that it's been completed. Are there any changes to it? What are the hazards? And we're going to be moving forward, right? That makes sense? Good. See if I can do it without screwing it all up again.
The second one down, what's that one?
This one?
By you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was your house. That was from Size Up. Yeah, that was from Size Up.
It's like my house on there.
All right, who wants it? I'm not going to give you guys the luxury of seeing it this time.
What are you doing?
So it's going to be a Size Up and a 360. You got it? All right, we're going to be harsh on you.
Jesus.
You're arriving on Jefferson Street. All right, that was where you were dispatched. It was the first box on assignment. You got a crew of 4. You're on Tower 3.
Dispatch from Tower 3.
Go ahead.
I'm arriving at a 2-story, small family home. Appears to have a vehicle fire on the Alpha side in the driveway. Be laying a line for fire extinguishment. Engine or Tower 3 will be assuming Jefferson Command. 360 to follow.
Sound good? Hard to tell, is this a car fire? Is it?
Right.
I'm not going to judge on that. This one's kind of a tough one. So, but that's what a Size Up is. Give your best assessment of what you're seeing.
Appears.
Exactly. And that's why simulation world gets a little difficult. Real world is a lot easier to tell what is actually burning, right?
You actually have that as a garage fire though? There we go.
So I'm just kind of giving you that little sneak peek. So as you go around,
Yep.
it's your Bravo,
All right, now I got it better.
that's your Charlie. This one was kind of photoshopped and put back together. That roof definitely collapsed. Heads up on that. Delta. Back on Alpha. And we kind of went through that quick. Can we go back through them? Or are you good?
Yeah, you can do one more.
All right, I'll go back through.
Bravo. Charlie. Delta. Yeah, Tower 3, or, dispatch from Tower 3.
Go ahead.
360 complete. We do have a working garage fire on the Alpha Bravo side. I will be having taken an offensive attack on from the Bravo Alpha side. Have next truck coming in to secure a water supply.
Good 360 follow-up? I mean, think about it. He called this in as a car fire. Hey, guys, heads up. This is a garage fire.
Working garage fire.
Would it be great to say an attached garage fire? Yep, that again goes back to, is it pertinent or not? In this one, it is pertinent because it's attached to a residence and that changes the dynamic of it all. On this? Defensive?
I don't think it's not
Just
very.
like the roof
defensive.
collapse.
This looks pretty.
Oh, sorry. That, the roof collapse after the fact. This is,
Actually, go to the Charlie's. Would you bring up the fact that the keys are already mounted?
so in reality, if I'm seeing that, I mean, that's a pretty rough day, right? If you're already seeing that.
Right, I would probably enter through that back door and then possibly even cut the garage door open, you know?
So the nice thing about this one. Service door, garage door, service door, window. Do I have points to fight this? Exterior fire attack on this one, right? At least with initially, knock it down before I get in there, right? I'm not saying that it's a defensive fire, but I am saying I'm gonna start with an exterior attack on it. I would agree with that 100%. Knock that back down before you get in there.
I think it is as soon as you open up anything in there, now you're feeding that sucker.
Oh, yeah, yep, absolutely. And that's why if I'm going to open anything, it's gonna be with the mindset to start spraying water through it immediately, right? So again, even if I'm saying stay on that alpha side, go ahead and take this door right here, is to take that door with a line sitting right here and start spraying inside. That's fully charged, it's pushing out everywhere. You're gonna have a rolling fire pretty
But
quick.
when you do your 360, if you go around the Delta side, it looked like that window was already breached.
Charlie said.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
the Charlie side,
Yeah,
yeah.
so that one's already been breached, so.
So just to control flow, just start spraying water through there.
That's already been established, right? So without even introducing a new flow path, I could just utilize what's already been opened up, right? Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that either.
You go back to that Bravo side, was there anything going on? No, there wasn't.
No.
No,
There's
that's
nothing
Delta.
going on?
That's Delta. Bravo. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. I didn't know if there was a window over there or not.
What else did we learn other than fire extent and location on that 360? What other hazards do we have on that? People are home? Possibly. You got people or vehicles in the driveway. If I have an established contact with them, I still have to assume that somebody's inside, right?
Limited access to the garage too. It looked like there was a car in front of that truck.
Yeah, so there's car here, and then another car right in front of it. So you got 3 cars plus an additional one right there. So you've got obstructions in the driveway to gain access. So, and trying to get around all that to the Charlie side too is not gonna be necessarily the easiest thing in the world either, because you've got snow, right? Pretty deep snow on that. What else did we learn on a 360? Other than fire? What other access did we have into it? What kind of a basement was it? See?
Maybe there wasn't any.
We got, we
2-story.
got
Looks
two
like it's some
back
kind of
doors.
a split level.
Is there a basement?
We got 2 back doors.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember if there was a basement on this one. This one might have been slab on grade.
There's no windows, so no.
There, I believe this, unless I just didn't capture the windows on this somehow, I believe this one actually was maybe slab on grade. And you can tell this garage was actually an add-on. You might not necessarily know that just from a 360, but some of the clues that you're gonna get is there's a door here and a door here. And a door here and a door. I mean, that's a lot of doors. Not too many builders do that, right? This collapsed because it was not built properly. It was literally just nailed into the built right. This whole garage, as it butt up against this house right there, was just basically not towed in structurally into that, because again, somebody added it on, framed it up, and just tacked it to the structure up against this house.
So did it get into the house?
It did not.
The build rate stopped.
The built right stopped.
Exactly.
Exactly. It was built right. But we did have a very close call on this one. Right? Chief Strike, who was actually with, I think he was with Centennial at the time.
He was.
Yep.
That's when we get
Yep.
stuck in the windows.
He was actually up on the roof,
Yeah,
it's right here, and they were working along that peak right there, right by that window, to kind of check for any extension along there, because we were holding a lot of heat up there. Fire's already been out, we're doing overhaul, investigators working on the inside of that. We had an investigator in the garage. I remember this because I was on deck, and our job was just to kind of protect everything. I'd run back to the truck because I didn't have the necessary tools for us to be on deck. And when I went back to the truck, guess what happened? Everything came crashing down. Again, luckily, investigator had already walked out by that time. Luckily, Chief Strike and the members up on that roof were close enough to that window to basically just kind of jump and hang into that window right there before it came crashing down. But a lot of potential where somebody could have gotten pretty seriously hurt on that, right? And the assessment that we kind of found on this is the things that we didn't consider was how much smoke, charring, heat, all that stuff that was holding into this garage. Again, you see all this smoke just kind of pouring out of this thing. You don't see any flames. It's holding a lot of heat. What's one thing that we haven't really mentioned too much on this? The snow load. This was after a fairly substantial amount of snow. There've been a lot of melting and whatever else. It's very heavy condensed on that roof. And now we also know that it wasn't built right. It wasn't built properly. It wasn't structurally sound to begin with. And you add a fire on top of it, and you add a heavy load on top of it. Then you add a working load with people standing up on top of it, pounding at it, trying to open up the space, and it collapsed. So it's important for us to kind of consider those factors as we put people in different situations and different locations and how it's going to affect the building and the potentials that it's going to cause. Making sure that we have people in the right places, set up to do the right things, protecting the people that are doing those things and the eventual possibilities that they could be coming across, which can still be that. I think we forget a lot of the times that maydays and all those negative things that can happen with injuries and everything else, they take place a lot during the overhaul phase. I think we kind of get that collective sigh, the fire's out, things are getting better. There's still a lot of potential for people to get hurt and injured in this phase as well. So you have to stay on your toes. You have to continue to evaluate. You have to continue to assess the building, the layout, the access points, what people are doing and how it can affect that building and the potentials of it. So again, just another mindset. Not saying that those things would be on the 360, but you've seen it. You got to walk that building. You got to start building what your thoughts are of the potentials for this and what could happen. All right. So threw a lot at you tonight. This was kind of, again, last week was a boring night. This week was the fun night. All right. So I hope this was beneficial. Does anybody have any questions before we completely wrap it up? I know we went a little late. No? Okay. So my goal is I will send out some more of those size up things for you guys to look at, including maybe one or two, 360s for you guys just to kind of have. And that will also include what we would be giving, as this is how we would define it. This is how we would do it. I encourage you just to practice it a few times just on your own. Where I really gained my learning and benefit was when I went through this and I was going through this training and doing size ups. You almost have to do this constant. How awkward was it to try to get that flow down? Small, single story, single family residence. It almost sounds like a tongue twister trying to run through that, right? It's difficult. When you're driving home, you're driving through your neighborhood, look at a house. What would I define that as? So you drive by a commercial building, you're going to get a cup of coffee. What would I define this as? How would I size up a strip mall? What size would this building be? How would I consider that? The fire and all of that, that's going to come with practice, along with the simulation side. But getting that initial size up, building descriptions, things like that, that stuff you can practice all day long. And just going through that mental process yourself is going to continue to establish your comfort, all right, with that flow. And that's the biggest part, is getting that flow, that understanding to get everything to flow out. One thing I really like tonight is nobody just jumped in and started talking, right? It's a lot of stuff to say on the radio. The size up has a lot of components, right? It's not just I'm on scene. I got to say a lot of stuff. The people that struggle the most is the ones that are too excited. They get on scene and they just hit that radio without thinking for about 2 seconds. Just absorb it. Just get on scene, look at what you have, take a breath, and then do your size up. Taking that extra 1 or 2 seconds will gain you so much more clarity and ability to get out a really good size up. So just do that. Don't rush yourself. Take the time, do it right. Practice it. Practice, 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 practice. Very important. Quiz each other as you come across, when I send these out, how would you have your tactics based? What would you do for this? What would you do for that? The more that you can work your memory and work your mind into absorbing what you're seeing and how you would attack it, the more you're going to be able to establish those at a much more rapid pace. All right. Throwing out initial orders is not an easy thing to do. You're literally, especially for some of us, if we've never done it, you're making a decision on sending a crew into an IDLH, and that's not anything that any of us should take lightly. But if we've practiced it enough and have an understanding for what we're trying to accomplish and why and what we can do and understanding of the resources available to us, you can make those decisions very well, very rapidly, based off of your practice that you've had there. All right. Make sense? Good. All right. Any other questions? Good. I'll send out the practice stuff. Next week, we'll work more on hand reports, decision-making, tactical objectives, and then the final week, we'll do some more of the transfer of command. And then we'll also just try to spend more time on just doing full scenarios. How does it sound? How does it look? How do we put it all together? Work? All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Yep.
All right.
open till 10 now?